Well, hello there. So, like many of you today, try to do work and things just aren't working well. The internet's having problems. Why is the internet having problems today? Because one region in AWS is down, has some outages, not completely down. So, let's take a look at it first. So, if we look at the service history, we can see today that North Virginia, the API gateways had some problems. North Virginia app flows had some problems. North Virginia upstream. So North Virginia is US East 1, which is funny because I'm constantly told steer clear of US East 1. It is the biggest and oldest AWS region. It has the most things in it. So Chime looks like it's not listing its area, but and they're having issues. Now, some things are tied to it. So like CloudFront is having some issues. So anything that's using CloudFront, that's a bad one. Most of these others, that we're going to talk about some things that would easily help you be able to not have problems when this happens. So yeah, it looks like everything except for CloudFront and Chime is North Virginia or US East 1. Okay. There's a lot of news stories on this. I was going to show you one, but we won't. You can just Google AWS outage. You'll get all sorts of stuff. What I want to take you to is they have this nice dashboard, and I'll link to this down below. If we scroll down to the very bottom is when we'll get the fact that, hey, something's happening. The following services have been affected. In fact, let's go back up to the top and see that this is just North Virginia. So US East 1. So they're investigating errors. Eventually, they mentioned that we can confirm right here. The root cause is a DNS resolution. So DNS caused everything to fall apart, which kind of makes sense. This is like the ability to get from one place to another and the traffic where things are going. So if someone went and changed which direction you had to go to for different cities or whatever on the interstate, and also updated all of because we're all using things like maps now, the electronic maps and navigation. So if all those got updated to be incorrect or not to make sense, it wreak havoc. That's kind of what happened here. One of the problems is when this happens is you've got to clear your DNS, so flush your DNS. And in fact, if we do Control F and search for flush right here. So talking about flushing your DNS caches will help. Now they're still having problems though. And it looks like the problems, last thing they talked about is still having to do with network connectivity. So they haven't been able to get it fully resolved. This is a pretty big outage. So there are a lot of big players that are affected. For that matter, where I work, my Canvas instance is affected. So I'm not able to get ready for my next classes yet. Hopefully soon. But let's talk about one of the things that would save most people from this. So AWS global infrastructure. In fact, I haven't looked at the map. Let's look at this. AWS global infrastructure. So Amazon in fact, let's just quickly look back here, and if we, how do I do this? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, right here. So if we look, we can go to say Europe, and look, Europe's not having a problem. Well, Chime, CloudFront. Those are things I think are tied to US East, unfortunately. So Africa, not having a problem. Middle East, not having a problem. Right? right here, Chime and CloudFront. In fact, if we click on these, it probably takes us to, so this is a global, but it's because there's some unfortunate ties to US East 1 for those two, CloudFront and Chime. Okay, so it's cool. We can look at the different locations here. Let me close that, or at least minimize it. Even in North America, if we look, a lot of the other regions are fine. A lot of the other regions are fine. It's just US East 1. So, as we look at the global infrastructure, I was actually, when I first started using AWS, someone said, hey, just steer clear of US East 1. And that will save you a lot of these big outages. I don't think that that's completely true. US East 1's big, and so they have some unique things. It's the largest, and it's the oldest, but I think they do a pretty good job at keeping things up. I think the bigger thing is that's where they are rolling out a lot of their new stuff because they have all the engineers there. I think that's why some things have had issues, but that's just my thoughts. So you have these coverage by regions, and you have the geographic regions. If you want to avoid an outage like this, what you need to do is architect your business, your digital business, your digital infrastructure to span multiple regions. And that will make it so that an issue like this should not be noticeable. Now, CloudFront's a different story. If that's not, if you need to be up, even when there's outages like this, besides spanning regions, you could also be, instead of being a multi-region, you could be a multi-cloud provider. So you could have AWS and Azure, which is the second leading competitor, or AWS and what is Google third now, distant. Azure's slowly catching AWS, still really far apart. But you have Amazon and Azure, Amazon, Google. You have a multi-cloud. I like always having, I refer to it as N+1, a cluster. Just like if you had to have a backup of your data, you always want to have at least one extra disk to be able to handle faults. You always want to have one more system to be able to handle a fault. Eventually, you might be big enough that you need one more cloud provider to handle faults. So, architecting to handle these faults is a good idea. It costs. So if you decide to not architect it to handle issues like this, to save some money, just realize when these issues happen, and they will, that you're going to have an outage. Anyway, an easy step in AWS is to go multi-region. A slightly harder step is to go multi-cloud provider. Having stuff local in your data center, you're going to have similar issues too. Usually, locally ran data centers have more outages than these big cloud providers. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. So far, it all looks like it's DNS and networking related. Hopefully things come back soon. When they come back, you are going to want to flush your DNS cache. Flushing your DNS, if you don't flush your DNS cache, you're going to have cached the problem, and when they resolve it, you're not going to notice it as fast. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.